Welcome back, everyone, to the Impossible Puzzles Show. It's episode 197. Good Lord, we are still standing today. We're saying hi to
Albert Lynn.
Albert Lynn, 23. That's not your real name. What's
That
up?
is
What's your story? Tell us all about yourself. We have
well,
as much time until my wife comes downstairs and says, "Well, you should be selling software." Jokes, jokes.
Mike, thank you so much. Thank you for making the time. You are right. Albert Lynn 23 is not my real name, but it's close enough. So my name is Albert Lynn. I am the owner, operator of Northview Law. And I wish that's all that I do, but that is not. So I started out my career as a corporate lawyer on Bay Street. Kind of like the TV show Suits, doing mergers and acquisition and everything in between. And I left after 4 years in the trenches of Bay Street to go diagonally across the street to another small asset management company called Brookfield Asset Management. So I was there on their private equity investment team as an investor for about 8 years. And there I was doing roughly the same thing in, buying and selling businesses, just slightly larger. And then I was, sort of wearing the investor hat. And then so thinking about, like these acquisitions from the perspective of being a good steward to investor capital. And after about 8 years of this, so by that time, I would have spent probably 11, 12 years, more than a decade on Bay Street. This takes us to 2024. And that was a time where I felt that I needed to take more entrepreneurial risk and do something for myself, I guess. And so in 2024, I left and then I started my own family office that invests in early stage startups in climate tech. And I also, I saw a problem in the legal industry, specifically when you look at sort of like smaller towns and suburbs and smaller like rural areas, sort of everywhere outside of London, Ontario and Toronto. You have large growing communities that really don't have access to like good quality legal service because all the practitioners who are there are aging and retiring. And the kids, well, as you know, lawyers are some of the most risk adverse people on earth. So good luck convincing them.
Anti-Semitism. No, I'm kidding.
Yes. So good luck
Who
convincing
told
them to
you
take a
about
risk.
my Jewish family? Oh my God. Go on.
No, so I saw opportunity, and I think it's also like speaks to me because you're doing something civically good, and so we decided to build a platform that a law firm, a regional law firm that services the underserved secondary and tertiary cities, let's call it. And so, kind of like since we got going in 2024, we're roughly at like 15 lawyers, 50, 60 employees, and looking to continue to grow and then continue to serve our communities. I'll stop there.
Oh my God. No, no. We're just opening the can of worms here. The investor hat, if you will, the lawyers being risk adverse, the desire for entrepreneurial risk, so many climate tech, lack of legal services to people who aren't rich Jews. I can say that. No, I'm kidding. Isn't it so interesting how literally I've heard over 1,000 times people have shown, I don't know, pitch decks or through accelerator programs or
Yep.
mentorship. And there's so many people going around with, I have a great idea. Where's my money? Investors,
Mhm.
investors. And I'm like, no, no, you don't know. It's not what you think it is. And until the money ends up in someone's account, nothing is real. It's there's so many layers upon layers upon layers. And you like doing that, or it was
Yeah,
miserable?
I do, and it's funny. I liken sort of like my journey going from big corporate to sort of like that entrepreneurial leap as like it's both the most humbling and rewarding experience that someone can have. It's imagine if I were to liken my skill set as playing baseball. In some ways, it feels like you're going from playing on the New York Yankees, where for every single function you could possibly imagine, there is a team for it. And then I have dietitians, I have people who does my workout, I have people who deal with my PR, I have everything. Now imagine going from that context to building a new baseball club in Division 4 Paraguay. It's a
Yes.
big difference. And then so I don't
Yes.
want to, I wanted to paint that mental imagery to give you the feel of that difference, that like you're in the trenches. And
Oh,
I think the other thing is that it's not hierarchical, like one is not better than the other. They are just different. And like I think when you're sort of like in entrepreneurship, like you have to know that you're gonna have 47 jobs, and there are days where you think you're gonna keel over, and that's a very normal day. That's almost every day.
yeah, yeah. I'm just in agreement. And I've had funny conversations where someone's like, "Oh, can I do what you're doing?" And I'm like, if I were doing, if I worked in your job at banking, I would slit my neck and wrists in the first minute. And he's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, I'm just saying that if you, in the same way, if you were to come and sit in my messy basement in front of, doing podcasting and a bunch of crazy toys and shapes and a complete mess and puzzles everywhere and inventors and unpaid legal
I love
bills
it.
that increase on interest and wives threatening divorce and yelling at 5 kids." I'm like, if I were to live your life, I would be like, no. And if you were to live my life for like 30 seconds, you would just, we'd bury you alive. And so it's fascinating. Yeah. I am not a corporate person. I learned that at 16 years old. No, no, thank you. I can't. I'll kill someone.
Well, it's the
You
same
like
thing.
being an entrepreneur. You
Yeah.
like the rawness, the
I love
Paraguay
it.
fourth tier. You're on your own. Endless fires to put out. I always say to people, if it were just doing the selling or the marketing, it would be great. But that's not what it is. It's everything. Yeah, 100. I said so, and it's like having 200 jobs and 1,000 children and driving a bus. It's like driving a bus where everyone is like mentally ill and throwing sandwiches at you, and yet you have to get everyone home on time and fed. And
That's right.
and their parents are going to kill you if kids don't come home on time. Yeah, it's a craziness. You like the craziness.
I love the craziness. I think it's like it's fascinating. It's like I have this exact same conversation with business partners and friends, is that it's not for everyone. Like that 0 to 1 journey,
Oh,
you have to love it, and in some ways you have to be sick a little bit.
you have to be severely mentally deranged. You need to.
I don't know
Yeah.
how else to explain this. It is not for the faint of heart. And then, but I think what's interesting is that once you have gone through the journey once, you know that you can repeat this. Like, listen, do I know how like cabinet making work? Absolutely not. And then like I've tried it. It's really hard. And then, but could I figure out if there is a particular space in the cabinet making space that looks like there's a good opportunity? Could I figure it out myself or partner with the right people to get going to capture that opportunity? Yes, I can. And so I think it's both very, very challenging when you're going through the grind. But once you've gone through the grind, it also gives you this measure of confidence about the repeatableness of like that success.
It's so true. Here we're talking about you eventually you just get used to what it is. So I reflect on like when I reflect on all the different jobs or small businesses I've been involved in since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a different mentality when it's a small, tiny business and there's maybe
Yeah.
one person or 5 people and it's all ragtag and it
Yeah.
works and it's a little bit of duct tape. There's
Yeah.
a massive difference between like everyone holding each other's, like a military
Yeah.
on our installment, if you will, like a small ragtag team of samurais or whatever, versus a
Exactly.
large clunky, you know, large clunky, you know, lethargic, gut wrenchingly repetitive, where you feel like a tiny cog in a big machine. And yeah, I remember I look back in my life when like my mom's like, you should come work at the, in banking, and well, you do some filing for me, and then another little role and another little role. And then yeah, I'm so glad I did that early in life, because I'm like, oh God, no, I can't. I cannot. Now I'm 42, married with 5 kids, but like, oh man, I could not I mean, I'm like completely, I'll like just break everything in the first day. And yeah, I need to exude myself and do
Yeah.
different things and fail. I love the fail and network and move and shake
Yeah.
and do. I've been called a wild octopus. I have been, I think there was a trade show once where someone's like, 2 guys were whispering. It's like, oh, that Merker, he's going to come and eat all the chicken wings again, right when they come out. And I was like, oh, thank you. And they're like, no, you.
Yeah, that wasn't a compliment.
Yeah, I guess it's also a certain level of luxury, if you will, if you have the bandwidth. And not everyone has the same, gas in the tank. I know some people where they're just like, they work and then they need to come home, watch Netflix for like 4 hours, and they don't even have, and they tell me how busy they are. I'm like, you told me you binge watch Netflix for 4 hours. You don't know what busy is. There was someone there like,
Yeah.
if you want me on the podcast, I can only do 10 minutes. I'm really busy. I'm like, busy? You're not married. You don't have any kids. There are no patents. There are no legal fees. What are you busy with? He goes, don't play games with me. And I'm like, man, you play games with you. There's a lot of the fakeness to entrepreneurship and the desire to, on LinkedIn, you post this, but you don't post that. And you feel that you are honestly representing yourself online, or are you a little bit afraid to show your true colors, or what sayest thou?
Well, I think it's interesting you say that. And like internally, we're like developing that authenticity. Like in person, it's easy because it's your upbringing, it's who you are. And then it's difficult like for you to sort of break patterns that like I've been living in this skin for 40 plus years. This is who I am. And so I think it's easy for you to be authentic in person. When you come to like sort of like the digital like presence, we try our best to be our authentic self. But you got to remember, for old guys like us, like when there is a time when I was young, there was no internet. So
Me
for
too.
older guys like us, we're like, wait, what are we supposed to do with this thing? Like, it's not normal for us.
Oh.
We don't know what we're supposed to do. And then so we struggle and we fumble with it. And then we ourselves are starting to dial in that just treated kind of like my apologies, treated like normal life, being authentic self. And then I think the only difference is that sort of in the online forum, it's different in person, where you could have a long, nice conversation, whereas the attention span of like the internet, it's like snap seconds, right? And so I think the method of communication has to be slightly different, so that while you're still authentic, but you would just talk a little bit differently if there's a timer on you all the time, right? And so like I think I would say that like we try to stay away from the we're the best 40 under 40, and then like the sort of like the noise, because it doesn't really tell anyone like who you are. And rather, we're working on ourselves to try to tell a more authentic story about who we really are. And then all the meanwhile, try not to get canceled. And so those are the things that we're trying to balance.
Yeah, I'm always okay. I'm not the biggest consumer of media like YouTube or movies or TV, but I have so many critics now, and there's so many people who, I guess I've become a bit like a polarizing figure. The podcast very much has become a way for me to be like, Well, I didn't say that. That guest said it, and I'm just repeating what he said. Because if you interview a lot of people and there's like 40 minutes here and 40 minutes here,
Yeah.
I could be like, well, he said that when I showed him this. So I'm just repeating what they said. And they're like, really? So I've learned I can hide behind the podcast, hide behind the LinkedIn, hide behind the YouTube videos, and or even today, I was just looking at my calendar. I'm like, okay, I've filming like 5 podcasts today. There's 6 other meetings on top of the podcast. At any moment, I'm going to have a 2-year-old come downstairs and smash everything and knock over my root beer. It's like living dangerously almost. And, I was up at like 4 a.m. I was like, okay, I better clean this up because, it's not every day that people are sticking around and everything's up in the air. It's like being thrown off a cliff. And you're like, okay, will the parachute open? Thrown out of a plane, well, is the parachute packed? Okay, will it open on time? Get it, and you're just like, and there's only so much time before you hit the ground. And that even if the parachute opens, that's going to give you you're still not coming home so quickly. And there's so much to do and solve, and you go insane. It needs to be crazy.
You know what? It's funny. It's funny you say that. It is a special skill set of people who love the entrepreneurial journey. You have to feel very comfortable, like what I call like building rockets as you launch them, quite literally. And then like you are building things and you're iterative about everything, and you're able to make very quick decisions with very limited information. And then it's how we can quickly move through each of those and then execute what we had in our mind, and then see how that turned out. We don't know how that's going to turn out. And then listen to market feedback, and then quickly go back to the lab and do it again and again and again and again.
Amen. I'm calling the rabbis and saying Rabbi Lynn has given a great wisdom here. It's so true. It's just like experiment after experiment.
Yep.
And I'm literally like, I tried this. Okay. Oh, no, people don't like that. Okay. What did I learn? And then it's like, come over here. And I'm literally, there are days where I'm like, okay, let's see how many times I'm going to be abused psychologically, mentally today. And someone's like, abused? What's going on over there? And I'm
what's going on in your basement, Mike?
I'm like, okay, I got my, okay, let's organize our puzzles here. And I got my Rickroll puzzle that no one can interpret but me. And I can now sing the Indian national anthem, and we'll add that to the stack. And of course, we'll throw in Psalm number 2 as a mnemonic fragment. And then it's like, it's one thing when it's like me playing with my 4-year-old daughter. And, it's another thing when it's like a serious podcast and I'm supposed to be serious. And she's like, makeup time. And lipsticks are smeared over my lips. And,
that's a great show. That's a great idea for a show.
It is most episodes is my daughter comes downstairs and puts makeup on me while I'm trying to interview people. And you know what? It's fascinating. I have a 2-year-old son. I have a 4-year-old daughter. I have a 6-month-old baby. I also have a 10-year-old and 8-year-old son. And you need to take, they love it. When people come over and they're like, and Daddy, who's this? And I'm like, oh, this is a videographer. He's going to film in the basement with Daddy, and Daddy's going to put on the clown costume. This is, it's so exciting. It's because it's the ultimate TV show. If you're ever, if you, what did I say to someone the other day? If you're happy doing a job you don't like, but it pays some money, and then you go home at the end of the day and you unplug from the job you don't like, and then you have time to do this and this and this and this and this and this and this, and you can binge watch the Netflix, and you have your YouTube shows, and you spend time with your wife, and you have one kid, whatever. If you're happy with that, that's kosher. That's fine. Don't worry about that. And they're like, but I saw this. I'm like, okay, there's a huge difference between watching one, podcast for 30 minutes or a TikTok for 30 seconds and being like, oh, I'm interested in entrepreneurship. I'm like, no, you're an accountant. No, tomorrow you're an accountant. Yesterday you're an accountant. When you die, they'll put an accountant on your tombstone. Stick with that. You don't want to know anything about toy designs and media representations and podcasts. No, you stay in your lane, just as I stay in my lane. And you know, there's an allure. I keep telling people, there's this allure going around, like, oh,
Yeah.
we're gonna be, oh, I have ideas, and I'm like, no, 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 no. No, entrepreneurship's like taking the thing you like the most and doing it as many times as needed until you don't like it anymore, and then you'll finally then you'll get money out of it.
You got it. I think you got that in a nutshell for sure.
And what are other experiences you've had that there's got to be a reason when you stepped away from law or stepped away from the investor world? What is it ultimately that you just said, ugh, oh, I will never again. Oh, the terrible.
You know what's really funny? It's always something that in the very deep back of your mind that something is missing. There's this great quest, and then you can feel this drumbeat. You don't know what it is, but you know you're missing something. And then I liken it to I'm gonna age myself. You know,
I'm 42. I was born in 84, so I'm 42.
Okay, so
you're not that old.
you remember this one? Like, remember the movie like Legends of the Fall when like Brad Pitt was like the Hollywood hunk, and then like the character Tristan, where every like couple of years, inexplicably, he would have a need to uproot and go do something. I don't know if it's that different from that. I think it's kind of like
true.
that. And then you have this calling that it's like, you know what? I'm not taking enough risk. You know what? Like this, like learning legal execution and legal strategy, this is great, but there's something more. There's something more on the other side of the ocean. What is it? I have no idea, but I think I need to get on this boat and cross the ocean.
Yeah, there's that raw feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can so relate. It's hard to like wrap one's head around it or label it, but there's this raw movie-like feeling of,
yes,
oh, I just, I can't live in a box and I can't be bureaucratically tied to just this. I talking sometimes to teachers or rabbis or educators. It's fascinating, right? And they're all like saying, oh, what worked 10 years ago or 20 years ago is not working anymore. And I'm like, of course it's not working. And they're like, what are you getting at? And I'm like, I don't know. I thought you said it's not working. What did you mean? And they're like, no, what are you offending me? And I'm like, no, I'm just saying in my, poor attempts to pretend to be a teacher for, part-time for a year here or 2 years there, I was shocked by what's, not just schools, but also like what's considered a normal work day, like what is actually done like in a work day. And then it's like you almost like someone's like, yeah, it's like living in the Matrix trying to go back to
my God.
And I'm like, what? It's like, Michael, and I know people where it's like, I haven't worked like a regular 9-to-5 job for 15 years, but if I want healthcare or if I want to retire within the decade, I need to do something a little more structured. Sometimes people get married and then they have to settle down, whatever. But like, yeah, once you're out, you cannot go back. Like you cannot.
No. And Mike, I love that, like the whole reference, the Matrix and the blue pill, the red pill. It's true. Yeah. It's once you sort of like can see it and can see like sort of like that risk, that freedom, that accountability, and then like that whole thing that comes with like taking the entrepreneurial dive, you can't unsee it. There's no going back to the Matrix.
Yeah. I even my wife, many times she's just like, why can't you just do something stupid? And I'm like, well, don't you see the contradiction in the phrasing? It's like, it's I'm fortunate also that like I come from a world where like a lot of people are all running their own small businesses, some successful, some many failures, but there's a vibe of that and a feeling of that. And I've even been scolded 15 times. I've been like fired from this or thrown out of this or thrown off this startup or called a wild goose or a loose cannon, which I thought was a compliment. obviously a cannon that's very loose. I'm like, well, if it's loose, maybe you could fire it unpredictably. And I'm like, no, it's an insult against you. And a wild goose is not a compliment. And you like working with people running a million miles in a million directions, and it keeps your heart beating fast, and it keeps it's like the ultimate rush. The ultimate rush is when you don't know where the chips will land.
Yeah.
And someone's like, but when are you selling this? And I'm like, great question. No. And then someone's like, no, explicitly, like, I wish to buy it. And I'm like, well, I have to package it. And, so someone send me a purchasing order. And I'm like, well, we're not there yet. You're turning away money. And I'm like, yeah, there's bigger, it's so hard to explain to someone. How do you explain your life to people to muggles?
Well, it's interesting. It keeps everything kind of like it keeps me on my toes every day. So like right now, like day to day, I'm working on scaling Northview Law, like the platform. And it's like not only am I sort of doing like at the enterprise, like corporate level, like building the organization, I actually do practice like at least like half of my time like in corporate law. Like I love it so much that it's almost like a hobby that like you can't stop yourself from doing it. And then so I help a lot of corporate clients, like with particularly like the hairier it is, the more I enjoy it. And then so I love practicing law. And then sort of like it's interesting, we sort of self-select for the things that interest us, right? And like so a lot of my client base is really like earlier stage startups and people who are scaling their business, and then they're kind of like at the point where okay, they do need some legal help, but it's not just purely legal, it's the integration of that experience of being an entrepreneur, and then having the foresight of like what like an institutional like scale company would do in this scenario, and integrating like kind of okay, the harsh reality of entrepreneurship, what an institutional business would do, what legal means, and then like putting all that together as like, hey, simple sentences of 10 to 15 words. This is your problem. This is your answer. These are the reasons why that you should do it this way. And then this is how I can help you. And then like, do you want to do this? And so it's honestly like day to day.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Framing. You're okay. Interesting. So Albert, you're experiencing where it's not, the 0 to 1 layer of law, or which is like, nothing's ever just. I was saying this to someone just like 2 hours ago. I'm like, it's not just media or podcast or YouTube channel. There has to be something that you're doing it for or with or by. You can't just put out one video and cry. No, you need to pump out like 100 videos, and you can't be random. I'm talking into a phone. No, there needs to be a guest maybe, and you need to. And I was trying to, and then I realized like, it's very hard to explain the non-linear nature of like promoting a new product or trying to build up attention or trying to network with different people. And someone's like, networking? Who has time for that? I'm like, no, if you're running a business or you're trying to, you have to meet people. They're like, but the product will sell itself. I'm like, no. It's the products do not sell themselves. Oh, but I've been working on it for so long. I'm like, no, the more you work on it by yourself, the worse it gets. The more you get alienated from the user. And we all have to drink our own Kool-Aid or whatever, eat our own dog food, so to speak. But like, I had so many interesting discussions today where I keep seeing people are building this product or this idea or this. And then sometimes I'm just like in a room and I'm hearing, a pitch. I'm sitting at some event and someone, 10 speakers are going and each one's pitching for 30 seconds. And I'm like, oh, no. And then I realized like, okay, sometimes you have a group of 20-year-olds and they each paid like, I don't know, $50 to speak for 1 minute. And I learned that, well, if that's for the free food and I'm eating the food and I'm not going to say anything negative, but I just want to go up and strangle sometimes the person and be like, okay, that's not your product. This is your product. And no, you're not selling to that market. You're selling this. And I've learned in life through my own faults that mentoring or trying to listen to others and trying to give feedback, it's very difficult today more
Mhm.
than ever. And it's rare. It's happened a couple times where someone's like, okay, Mike, you're 20 years older than me. You're 15 years older than me. You've tried and failed this 10 times before it's worked a couple times. What do you think? What would you say is helpful? So I've learned that unless someone explicitly
Mhm.
asks, it's very hard sometimes just to watch and be like, because you can tell when
Yeah.
someone's selling something well or poor. You can tell when a product's good or
Yeah.
bad. You can tell when someone's disorganized or
Yeah.
not, right? So like,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. No,
And
we
how do you
see
deal with that? How do you deal with holding your tongue and not just strangling another younger entrepreneur or something?
always funny. Whether in the context of like, let's say, an adversarial sort of like conversation or conversation with someone who holds an adversarial interest or advising a client, I sort of think of it as the same communication task. The key is clarity. What is the message? Like, what are you trying to tell this person? And like, if you don't know, if you can articulate that in 6 words or 10 words, you already lost. You have to know what exactly we're saying. And then I think the second thing is that I think it's, the person who's receiving the message, they may not be coachable or they may not be open to negotiation. So there's nothing you can do in that scenario. However, I think what in the sort of language of like power of persuasion is trying to think from that person's perspective. What would be a win-win for everyone? Why do you think that they should agree with you? Because if you take in this commentary, you may be able to create a product that's a decalogue better than this. And then why don't you try this? And you know what? I could be wrong, but what is the risk to you? You do an iteration, you could be completely wrong. And then after that, you could say that you still gain something because now you know that doesn't work. And then let's quickly move on instead of having this debate about like whether it work or not, and it's all existing in our mind. Why don't we just do it? And then we'll find out whether it works or not.
Yes, the doingness as opposed to the thinkingness.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember telling, someone was like a podcast, and they came over to my messy basement here, and I was being filmed, and it was so interesting. It's like, Michael, you're 15 years older than me. What do you think about podcasting and media? And I was like, interesting question. He goes, and because you're older, surely there were no computers when you were younger. And I'm like, no, there were computers. I remember using a computer when I was 3 years old, trying to. And
Yeah.
he's like, there were computers. I'm like, there's always been computers. They just weren't,
Yes.
they weren't the same shape and structure. And it's like,
Yep.
but before the iPhone, how did people do anything? I'm like, well, before, cars, people had horses. There were always, there's
Right.
always older alternatives that worked fine.
Yep.
And no one complained. No one complained that, oh, this horse is not
Right.
electrical enough. And, the horse is, right, not the horse should be going 60 miles an hour. Like, so I've always learned to, when on the subject of explaining things to people, I've always learned that I'm like, no, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it's like, I've heard presentations where it's like, no one's doing this. There's no competitor. I'm like, no, the competitor. They're like, what do you think? Are there competitors? I'm like, of course, there's always competitors.
Mhm.
You haven't met them yet because you haven't gone to market yet. You go
That's
to
right.
market and your competitor, you will see who your competitor.
Oh yeah.
They will rip you off. Everyone's coming to get
Yes.
you before you don't even know that they're ready to come and get you. And
That's
the
right.
guy's like, oh my God. And I'm like, this is not charity. These other people, this is their business.
Yeah.
They're not, it's not charity. They're not bowing down to give you market share. Whatever
Yeah.
you do, they will clone and copy it as fast as
Absolutely.
possible. And I it wasn't the right way, but I think I frightened people, and I guess when I was younger, if you spoke at a turn, you'd get a nice the Jewish grandmother would give you a nice zest across the face. So that doesn't, spare the rod and spoil the child. Your thoughts about today? Are people the younger people,
Yep.
they're softer. They're not always ready. Take punches and be killed. Yeah.
You
They
know
don't
what?
have
I feel like dated and aged, but like, yes, I think, listen, the younger generation, they have new capabilities that we don't. It's like, I have no idea how Instagram works. I have no idea how TikTok works. I'm like an old guy. And
Me
then,
too. Me too.
but the traditional values and the traditional sort of like the hard work, and then even like convincing someone that, hey, there's a lot of benefit in working in an office and then where you can meet real people. It takes a little bit of convincing, particularly for the younger generation who enter the workforce like kind of like during COVID. If that's their first entry into the workforce, I don't think they understand the importance of human relations and human interaction in your professional development. They just don't get it, because if you've always drank Kool-Aid, that's kind of like what you know, right? And then so I think there is a generational gap, but like it cuts both ways, right? Like coming back to like media, the importance of it. We're also going through our own self-discovery journey on that. And like sort of like the TLDR, the punchline is that we realize, like, for these very old world industries like professional services, there is a huge disconnect in the world that we live in versus like kind of how it's being done in that like niche of an industry. Like all you have to look at is like, if you look at, doesn't matter, like food and beverage or like the games industry, like when you are the designer, you are the creative and makes the thing. Once you figure out that, okay, there is very, very strong product market fit, people like this thing, you can, if you wanted to distribute like yourself, you can. Or there are distribution channels that's already set up. And you go, if you were going to talk to a generalist, you go to talk to Hasbro, Mattel, and then you see who can cut you the best deal, or you go talk to a specialist. But you don't necessarily have to distribute the thing yourself. Whereas in our industry, when you look at it, you could have come up with the best game, the best box of cereal. Your product market fit is there, but there is no one to distribute it for you. And so where we're coming from is like, holy crap, I think we're landing on something that in professional services generally, but like legal service much more specifically, the things that we do are so abstract. You can't taste it, you can't play with it, you can't smell it, you can't wear it. It's difficult. And the traditional way of doing this is that you're quote unquote like building this trust with this person who is looking like, somebody who looks trustworthy, wearing a blue blazer and a white shirt, who seems professional. That's sort of like the old way of selling professional services. But I think in the new age, and like what we're missing, quote unquote, from the kids is understanding, how do you tell people that we are authentic? We are just like your neighbors, but except your profession is you make games. My profession is I help business owners succeed with the legal stuff. That's what I do. And then, so we have to go back to like the storytelling. And then like, so from our sort of worldview, we can learn a lot from the kids. And to your point, in media, we're looking to build out like our authentic media, like sort of voice and that distribution. But also like, we want to tell our stories through our customers' success. So the idea is that, we help people with these abstract things, but our client could be people who are selling sausages, who are selling hamburgers. Like, let's say, like one of the hottest new brands like Rosie's Burgers, something like that, that people can taste, can relate to, and have a positive affinity to. And so I think, again, like what we're trying to do is to connect with clients and potential customers on the service side by telling client success stories with brands that are very, very brand forward. You can taste, you can smell, you can drink, and you can play with.
Yes. Yeah. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating. This is amazing. And in the last 2 minutes we have before my computer overheats, what do you say to those who are a few steps behind and they're a little less gray hair, like we might have? What do you say to the struggling younger person to encourage them and inspire those who are watching?
I think if there's one thought I can leave with, people who are kind of working through the struggles and then like sort of like the hard steps of entrepreneurship, really, you got to keep trying. You got to keep going. There is only one direction to travel that will work, which is forward. You don't dwell on sort of like the failures of the past. You do need to be introspective to understand what lessons, if any, was imparted by those failures so that you can sort of try not to make the same mistakes again. And then I think it's about having that conviction and then listening to like the data that's coming in, like what people like, what people don't like. Because at the end of the day, you have to discover that product market fit. You have to understand what people want. And then you have to be quite humble about that experience and that journey. That a lot of times I see kids like who are stuck on one thing. And then it's like, but it's very clear for someone who's got the life experience to say that, no, it's the adjacent thing that you're working on that people would be actually highly interested in, not the one thing that you are stuck on. And so I think you have to be open-minded, and then you have to be able to sort of like pivot quickly. You need to listen to the market, and then don't let like sort of like the little sort of setbacks hold you down, because like entrepreneurship is about sort of like getting punched in the face and then getting back up and then doing that multiple times a day. And so that's, I think if there's anything, it's sort of like having that animal spirit and just keep on going.
I love it. I love it. We will pause here. This has been an incredible episode. Thank you, Albert, for joining us.
Thank you, Mike.